Lisa Grant stepped off the transport ship and looked around the massive space station. Kepler Prime was bigger than any human city she had ever seen. Lights blinked everywhere, and strange sounds filled the air. Aliens of all shapes and sizes walked past her, going about their business. She had dreamed of this moment for years. Today was her first day as Earth's newest ambassador to the Galactic Council. Lisa had studied hard to get here. She knew the languages, the customs, and the trade rules of dozens of alien species. But seeing them all in person was different. A tall, blue-skinned alien approached her. His forearms moved in, what Lisa recognized as a greeting gesture. "Ambassador Grant," he said in perfect English. "I am Counselor Vexstar. Welcome to Kepler Prime." Lisa smiled and returned the gesture. "Thank you, Counselor. I'm honored to be here." Vexstar led her through the station's corridors. The walls were covered with screens showing news from across the galaxy. Trade ships came and went from the docking bays. Everything seemed busy and alive. "The council meeting begins in 1 hour, Vexstar explained. "Today we discuss new trade routes through the Andromeda sector. Your people have been quite helpful with shipping in that region." They entered a huge circular room with seats arranged in tiers. Hundreds of aliens were already there, talking in groups. Lisa felt small among them, but also excited. This was where the galaxy's future was decided. The meeting started with routine business. Lisa listened as various species talked about mineral rights, shipping schedules, and border disputes. Everything was translated into her earpiece, but she could understand most of it directly. Then the main topic began. A massive holographic display appeared in the center of the room. It showed a three-dimensional map of the galaxy, with different colored regions marking each species' territory. "The proposed trade route would cut travel time by 30%, said a reptilian alien with golden scales. "Ships could move goods from the core worlds to the rim much faster." Lisa studied the map carefully. She had seen similar maps before, but something about this one bothered her. The trade route the aliens were discussing seemed to curve around a large area of space in an odd way. She looked closer at the map. Human territory was marked in blue, but it seemed small compared to other species regions. What confused her was that the map simply ended at the edge of human space. Beyond that, there was nothing. No stars, no unexplored regions, no "here be dragons" markings. Just empty space where the map stopped. Lisa raised her hand. The room fell quiet, and hundreds of alien eyes turned to look at her. "I have a question." "About the map," she said. Her voice echoed in the large chamber. Council leader Zethkri, a massive creature that looked like a cross between an octopus and a tree, spoke from the center of the room. "Yes, Ambassador Grant? I noticed the map ends at human territory. What's beyond that region? Are there unexplored systems we could use for the trade route?" The silence that followed was complete. Not a single alien spoke. Lisa could hear her own heartbeat in the quiet room. The translator in her ear had stopped working, but she didn't think anyone was speaking anyway. Zethkri's tentacles moved in. What Lisa had learned was a sign of discomfort. Other aliens looked at each other, but no one looked at the map anymore. "That concludes today's session," Zethkri said suddenly. "We will continue tomorrow." The meeting broke up quickly. Aliens filed out of the room without their usual chatter. Lisa sat in her chair, confused and a little embarrassed. Had she said something wrong? "Ambassador Grant." The voice came from behind her. Lisa turned to see an older human man walking toward her. He had gray hair and wore a simple diplomatic uniform. "I'm Carl Mason," he said. "I've been Earth's senior diplomat here for 30 years. We need to talk." Carl led her to a small human section of the station. The corridors here were painted in Earth colors, and the artificial gravity felt like home. They sat in a quiet cafe that served real coffee. "What did I do wrong?" Lisa asked. Carl sipped his coffee and looked tired. "You asked the question no. One asks, what question? What's beyond human space?" Carl set down his cup. "In 30 years, Lisa, I've never heard a single alien ask that question." "Not once." Lisa frowned. "That's strange. Don't they explore? Don't they want to know what's out there?" "They do explore. They send ships to every empty system in the galaxy. They map dead worlds and catalog nebulae. But they never, ever ask to go beyond human territory. Why not?" Carl was quiet for a long moment. "There are agreements, Lisa. Old agreements. Agreements that are very good for humanity." "What kind of agreements?" "The kind that keep the peace. The kind that let us trade with everyone and stay friends with everyone. The kind that give us more influence in the council than our size should allow." Lisa felt more confused than ever. "Carl, you're talking in riddles. What's really going on?" Carl stood up. "I'm going to give you some advice, Lisa. In all your time here, no matter what you see or hear, never ask that question again. Never ask what's beyond human space. Never ask why the maps end where they do. And if any alien ever asks you about it, just smile and change the subject. But why? Because some questions are better left unasked. Some doors are better left unopened. Some things are better left unknown." Carl walked toward the door, then stopped. "Get some rest, Lisa. Tomorrow we'll start your real education about how galactic politics actually work." After he left, Lisa sat alone with her coffee. She thought about the map, about the strange silence in the council chamber, and about Carl's cryptic warnings. She was supposed to be a diplomat, but she felt like she was missing half the conversation. She pulled out her personal tablet and called up a star chart. The official human exploration reports were all there. Every system humanity had ever visited was marked as surveyed or colonized or resource depleted. But beyond the last human outpost, the reports simply stopped. Lisa had always assumed there was nothing interesting out there. But now she wondered, what if there was something? What if humanity knew something the rest of the galaxy didn't? As she finished her coffee, Lisa made a decision. She would follow Carl's advice and not ask the question publicly. But that didn't mean she couldn't look for answers on her own. After all, she was a diplomat. Finding out secrets was part of the job. Dr. Elena Rodriguez floated in the zero-gravity lab of the research ship Horizon. Around her, samples from dozens of worlds spun slowly in their containers. She was studying alien bacteria when the ship's alarm began to sound. "All hands to stations," came the captain's voice over the intercom. "We have a distress signal near the border." Elena quickly secured her samples. The Horizon was a science vessel, but they always responded to emergency calls. It was the right thing to do, especially out here near human space where ships were rare. She made her way to the bridge and strapped herself into an observer's seat. Captain Torres was already giving orders to the crew. "Distance to the signal?" Torres asked. 2 million kilometers, replied the navigation officer. "It's coming from a small craft, maybe an escape pod. Any identification?" "The signal is Vorthan," said the communications officer, "but it's very weak." Elena knew about the Vorthans. They were an older species, known for being careful explorers. They rarely took risks, which made finding one of their ships in distress unusual. "Take us in," Torres ordered. The Horizon moved toward the signal. Through the view screen, Elena could see the escape pod tumbling slowly through space. It was badly damaged, with scorch marks along its hull. "Life signs?" Torres asked. "One, very weak," came the reply. They brought the pod into the cargo bay. Elena joined the medical team as they opened it up. Inside was a Vorthan male, barely alive. His purple skin had turned pale, and his breathing was shallow. "Get him to medical," ordered Dr. Patricia Hayes, the ship's doctor. "Elena, I need your help. You know Vorthan biology better than anyone." In the medical bay, they worked to stabilize the alien. Elena had studied Vorthan physiology for years. She knew their hearts had 3 chambers, and their blood carried oxygen differently than human blood. "He's been in space for days," Dr. Hayes said. "Maybe weeks. I don't know how he survived." The Vorthan's eyes opened slowly. They were the deep blue color of his species, but filled with terror. He tried to speak, but only made weak sounds. "Easy," Elena said in the Vorthan language. "You're safe now. We're here to help." The alien's eyes focused on her. "Human?" he whispered. "Yes, I'm Dr. Rodriguez. What happened to you?" The Vorthan tried to sit up, but he was too weak. "My name is Kickstall. Research expedition. We went too far." "Too far where?" Elena asked gently. Kickstall's eyes grew wide with fear. "Beyond the human worlds, into the dark between the stars." Elena felt a chill. She had heard whispers about unauthorized expeditions, aliens who tried to explore past human territory. But she had never met a survivor. "How many were in your expedition?" she asked. 12, Kickstall said. 12 of us went out. Only I came back." Dr. Hayes checked his vital signs. "His heart is failing. We don't have much time." Elena leaned closer to Kickstall. "What happened out there?" The Vorthan's breathing became more difficult. "We found structures, ancient things, older than any civilization we know, but we weren't alone." "What do you mean?" "Something was hunting us, something vast. We tried to run, but it followed us across star systems. It picked us off one by one." Elena's blood ran cold. "What kind of something?" Kickstall grabbed her arm with surprising strength. "Not alive, not dead. Something between. It feeds on ships, on crews, on entire worlds. We tried to warn others, but who would believe us?" "Why did you go there in the first place?" "We wanted to know," Kickstall said. "The maps end at human space. For 200 years, no one has gone beyond. We thought maybe there were resources, new worlds to claim." His grip on her arm tightened. "But there's nothing there worth claiming. Only death and things that should not exist." Dr. Hayes checked her instruments. "His heart is stopping. We're losing him." Kickstall looked directly at Elena. "The humans know. They have to know. You don't expand into empty space by accident. You don't build colonies at the exact edge of something by chance." "What are you saying?" "The humans didn't expand into that region. They built a wall, a barrier. They're keeping something in." Elena felt her world shift. "That's impossible." "Is it?" Kickstall's voice was getting weaker. "Think about it. Humans are explorers. You go everywhere, try everything. But you've never gone past your own territory. Not once in 2 centuries. We have exploration ships," Elena protested, "that come back with reports of nothing interesting. Always nothing interesting. Every single time." Dr. Hayes was working frantically with her medical equipment. "I'm sorry, Elena. There's nothing more I can do." Kickstall was fading fast. "Elena, promise me something." "What?" "Don't let anyone else go out there. Don't let them make the same mistake we did. The things in the dark, they notice when you get too close. And once they notice you, what? They follow you home." With those words, Kickstall died. The medical monitors went flat, filling the room with their steady tone. Elena stood in the quiet medical bay, staring at the body of the Vorthan explorer. Dr. Hayes was completing her final readings, but Elena wasn't paying attention. She was thinking about Kickstall's words. The humans built a wall. They're keeping something in. Could it be true? Elena had always been proud of humanity's role in the galaxy. Humans were known as honest traders, reliable allies, and brave explorers. But what if there was another side to the story, Elena? Dr. Hayes was looking at her with concern. Are you all right? I need to see the captain. Elena said. Captain Torres listened to Elena's report in his private office. His expression grew more serious as she repeated Kickstall's words. This stays between us for now, Torres said when she finished. We'll file a standard report about finding a survivor of a ship accident. But what about what he said? About humans building a wall? Torres was quiet for a long moment. Elena, how long have you been on exploration missions? 5 years. In those 5 years, how many times have you been asked to explore beyond human territory? Elena thought about it. Never, I guess. But that's because there's nothing out there. According to whom? The question hung in the air. Elena realized she had never questioned the official reports. She had simply accepted that the region beyond human space was empty and uninteresting. Captain, do you think Kickstall was telling the truth? Torres stood and walked to his window, looking out at the stars. I think a scared, dying alien told you what he believed. Whether it's true or not, I don't know. How can we find out? We can't. And we won't try. Our job is to study samples and catalog new species, not to investigate conspiracy theories. But even as Torres spoke, Elena could see doubt in his eyes. The captain was as curious as she was, but he was also more careful. After Elena left his office, she went back to her lab. But instead of working on her samples, she pulled up star charts on her computer. She looked at the boundary between human space and the unknown region beyond. The border was surprisingly neat, considering that space exploration was usually messy and random. Human colonies and outposts formed an almost perfect arc, like a fence, around something. Elena had never thought of it that way before. But now, looking at the pattern, it did look like a wall built to keep something in, or to keep everyone else out. Captain Jake Morrison sat in the pilot's seat of the patrol ship Sentinel, watching empty space through the viewscreen. He had been doing this job for 3 years, and it never got less boring. The Sentinel was a small ship with a crew of 6. Their mission was simple: patrol the border region of human space and watch for anything unusual. So far, Jake had found exactly nothing unusual. No pirates, no alien incursions, no mysterious signals. Just empty space and distant stars. Anything. On sensors? He asked his science officer, Lieutenant Beck. Same as always, Captain. Nothing out there but vacuum. Jake nodded. He had started to think his assignment was punishment for something, though he couldn't remember what he had done wrong. Border Patrol was where the military sent officers they wanted to forget about. His communications officer, Ensign Parker, looked up from her station. Captain, we're getting a message from command. Priority Alpha? Jake raised an eyebrow. Priority Alpha messages were rare. In 3 years of patrol duty, he had received maybe 5 of them. Put it through. The face of Admiral Kate Sullivan appeared on the main screen. Jake had only met the Admiral once, during his graduation from the Academy. She was a legend in the fleet, known for handling the most sensitive missions. Captain Morrison, the Admiral said, I need you to investigate some unusual readings in your sector. Coordinates are being transmitted now. Jake looked at Beck, who was studying the incoming data. Ma'am, what kind of readings? Energy signatures beyond the exclusion zone. Large ones. Investigate and report back immediately. The connection ended before Jake could ask any more questions. He stared at the blank screen, confused. Ensign Parker. What's the exclusion zone? Parker checked her computer. I'm not finding any reference to an exclusion zone in our mission files, Captain. Beck, What about those coordinates? They're about 6 hours away at maximum speed, right at the edge of our patrol area. Jake thought about it. He had been patrolling this region for 3 years and had never heard of an exclusion zone. But the Admiral seemed to know about it. Set course for those coordinates, he ordered. Maximum speed. The Sentinel moved through space toward the unknown readings. Jake used the travel time to study their destination. According to the star charts, there was nothing there but empty space. No planets, no asteroids, no known anomalies. Captain, Beck called out as they approached the coordinates. I'm picking up something strange. What kind of strange? Energy readings. Massive ones. But they're not coming from where they should be. Jake frowned. Explain. The readings are showing energy sources that would require entire star systems to generate, but there are no stars in that direction. Just empty space. Could it be a sensor malfunction? Beck ran diagnostics on all the equipment. Sensors are working perfectly, Captain. Whatever is out there, it's real. Jake studied the readings himself. Beck was right. The energy signatures were enormous, larger than anything he had ever seen. But they were coming from a region of space that was supposed to be empty. Captain, Parker said, I'm getting an incoming message. It's Admiral Sullivan again. Put her through. The Admiral's face appeared on screen, but this time she looked tense. Captain Morrison, report your findings. Ma'am, we're detecting massive energy signatures from empty space. The readings don't make sense. Stand by, Captain. Do not investigate further. Maintain your current position. Again, the Admiral cut the connection without explanation. Jake was getting frustrated with the mystery. Captain, Beck said, the energy readings are moving. Moving? How? They're changing position. Whatever is generating them is moving through space. Fast. Jake watched the sensor display. Beck was right. The energy sources were moving in patterns that suggested intelligence. They weren't random movements. 2 hours later, a large ship appeared on their sensors. It was heading straight for the Sentinel. Ship approaching, Parker announced. It's broadcasting human identification codes. Any idea what ship it is? Parker studied her instruments. The transponder says it's the battleship Aegis, but Captain, that's impossible. Why? According to fleet records, the Aegis was decommissioned 15 years ago. Jake felt a chill. Open a channel. Channel open, Captain. Unknown vessel. This is Captain Morrison of the patrol ship Sentinel. Please identify yourself. A new voice came over the radio. Captain Morrison, this is Admiral Sullivan aboard the Aegis. Prepare to be boarded. Jake looked at his crew. They all wore expressions of confusion. Admiral, you were just speaking to us from command headquarters. That was a recorded message, Captain. I've been out here for the past week. Stand by for boarding. The Aegis was massive compared to the Sentinel. As it approached, Jake could see that it didn't look like any human ship he knew. The hull was covered with strange equipment, and the design was unlike anything in the fleet. A shuttle docked with the Sentinel, and Admiral Sullivan came aboard with 2 Marines. She was older than Jake remembered, and she looked tired. Captain Morrison, she said, walk with me. They went to Jake's small, ready room. The Admiral closed the door and activated a privacy screen. How much do you know about your mission here? She asked. Border Patrol. Watch for unusual activity. Report anything strange. That's the official version. What do you think you're really doing? Jake thought about it. Honestly, Admiral, I've never understood why we patrol this region. There's nothing here. Sullivan smiled grimly. There's everything here, Captain. Things you can't imagine. Things that would end galactic civilization if they got loose. I don't understand. Those energy readings you detected? They're coming from entities that exist between dimensions. Ancient things that feed on entire worlds. They've been dormant for millions of years, but lately they've been stirring. Jake felt his world turn upside down. That's impossible. Is it? You've seen the readings. You know they're real. But why haven't we told the galaxy? Why keep it? Secret? Sullivan walked to the small window and looked out at space. Because the galaxy can't handle the truth. Most species would panic. Others would try to study these entities, which would be catastrophic. And some would try to use them as weapons. So we guard them alone? We guard them because we're the only species crazy enough to try. Humans are the only ones who see something impossible and dangerous and think, let's figure out how to fight it. Jake was quiet for a moment. How long has this been going on? 50 years. Since we first expanded into this region. We found signs of an ancient war, and then we found what was left of the losers. Sealed away, waiting. And the patrol ships? You're part of a network of early warning stations. Hundreds of ships like yours, watching for any sign that the seals are breaking. Sullivan turned back to Jake. The readings you detected today mean that something is waking up. Something big. What do? We do what humans do best. We stand between the monsters and everyone else. And we make sure the monsters don't win. Sullivan handed Jake a data pad. Your new orders, Captain. You're no longer on patrol duty. You're now part of the Guardian fleet. Jake looked at the orders. They were unlike anything he had ever seen. Weapons systems he had never heard of. Protocols for dealing with extra-dimensional entities. And authority levels that went far beyond anything a patrol captain should have. Admiral, am I ready for this? Sullivan headed for the door. No one is ready for this, Captain. But humanity doesn't wait to be ready. We just do what needs to be done. After the Admiral left, Jake sat alone in his ready room, staring at his new orders. 3 hours ago, he had been a bored patrol captain watching empty space. Now he was apparently humanity's secret guardian against cosmic horrors. He thought about the energy readings they had detected. Massive, intelligent, and moving. Something was waking up in the dark between the stars. Jake activated his ship's intercom. All hands, this is the captain. We have new orders. From now on, we're no longer the patrol ship Sentinel. We're Guardian. Station 7. He paused, thinking about how to explain this to his crew. And our mission is to make sure that the things sleeping in the dark stay asleep. Because if they wake up, everyone in the galaxy is going to have a very bad day. Commander Amy Foster had always been good at finding secrets. As head of intelligence for the Third Fleet, it was her job to know things that others didn't want her to know. But the files she was looking at now made her wish she had never learned to read. The secure terminal in her office displayed document after document marked with classifications she had never seen before. Project Nightwatch, Operation Darkwall, the Phoenix Protocol. Each file told a story that seemed impossible, but the evidence was undeniable. Amy had stumbled onto these files by accident. She was investigating missing supply shipments when she noticed unusual patterns in the logistics reports. Weapons that didn't exist in any catalog. Ships that were listed as scrapped, but still appeared to be receiving fuel and ammunition. Personnel transfers to units that weren't supposed to exist. The deeper she dug, the more questions she found. And now, 3 weeks later, she was looking at the answers. She wished she wasn't. Computer, display file Phoenix 7741. The screen filled with an incident report dated 6 months ago. The title made her stomach turn. Dimensional Breach Sector 7, Entity Classification, Harvester Class. Amy read the report carefully. A patrol ship had detected unusual readings near the edge of human space. When they investigated, they found something that shouldn't exist, a tear in space itself, with something trying to push through from the other side. The response had been immediate and massive. A dozen ships had surrounded the breach, using weapons that Amy had never heard of. The battle lasted 3 days. When it was over, 17 human crew members were dead, and the thing from beyond was pushed back into whatever dimension it came from. But what disturbed Amy most was the casualty list. The dead weren't listed as killed in action. They were listed as psychologically compromised beyond recovery. Computer, display personnel file for Marine Sergeant Ryan Foster. Amy's heart stopped when she saw her brother's picture appear on screen. Ryan had disappeared 2 years ago on what she was told was a classified mission. She had assumed he was doing deep space reconnaissance or maybe intelligence work. The truth was worse. According to his file, Ryan had volunteered for something called the Phoenix Protocol. Amy read the description with growing horror. The Phoenix Protocol was a program that trained humans to fight entities that existed outside normal reality. The training involved psychological conditioning that allowed people to see and interact with things that would drive most people insane. The success rate was listed as 22%. The other 78% died during training or lost their minds completely. But the 22% who survived became something more than human. They could perceive threats that existed between dimensions. They could use weapons that worked on principles science didn't understand. And they could fight things that would destroy entire planets. They were called Watchers. Amy found more files about the Watchers. There were currently 347 of them scattered across the galaxy, all stationed near the boundary of human space. They lived alone on small bases, monitoring instruments that detected movement in dimensions most people didn't know existed. The psychological profiles made for disturbing reading. Watchers showed patterns consistent with severe trauma, but they remained functional and effective. They had volunteered to sacrifice their sanity to protect everyone else. Computer, current status of Marine Sergeant Ryan Foster. Watcher Station 23, status active. Last communication, 72 hours ago. Amy felt tears in her eyes. Her brother was alive, but he wasn't human anymore. Not really. He was something else, something that stood guard against horrors she could barely imagine. She opened another file, this one about the entities the Watchers fought. Dr. Nathan Cross had spent 15 years studying what he called extra-dimensional predators. His research showed that these entities were drawn to large concentrations of intelligent life. Like the Galactic Council. Amy read Dr. Cross's conclusions with growing alarm. The entities had destroyed entire galaxies in the past. They moved from one galaxy to another, consuming every intelligent species they found. But something had trapped them in the dark space beyond the galaxy's edge millions of years ago. The seals that held them were weakening. Computer, display current threat assessment. The screen filled with a map of human space. Red dots marked locations where dimensional barriers were thin. Yellow dots showed where Watcher stations were positioned. Green dots indicated Guardian fleet positions. Amy counted the dots. There were hundreds of them, forming a perfect barrier around something in the dark space beyond human territory. It looked exactly like what it was, a wall built to keep something contained. But the red dots were increasing. More breaches were happening every month. The seals were failing faster than humans could repair them. Amy opened the most recent threat assessment. It was written by Admiral Sullivan, the commander of the Guardian fleet. Current estimates suggest complete seal failure within 18 months, the report stated. When that happens, entity emergence will become impossible to contain. Recommend implementation of final protocol. Amy searched for information about the final protocol. When she found it, she wished she hadn't. The final protocol was humanity's last resort. If the seals failed completely, human ships would retreat to the inner edge of their territory and create what the document called a firewall of annihilation. They would destroy entire star systems, to create a barrier that nothing could cross, including the human colonies in those systems. Amy sat back in her chair, overwhelmed by what she had learned. Humanity wasn't just protecting the galaxy from ancient horrors. They were prepared to sacrifice millions of their own people to make sure those horrors didn't spread. Her door chimed. "Come in," she called out. Admiral Helena Ross entered the office. She was Amy's commanding officer, and someone Amy had always respected. But now Amy wondered how much Admiral Ross knew about the truth. "Commander Foster," Admiral Ross said, "we need to talk." Amy looked at her computer screen, where classified files were still displayed. "I think we do." Admiral Ross sat down across from Amy's desk. "How much have you figured out?" "Enough to know that everything I thought I knew about humanity's role in the galaxy is wrong." "Not wrong. Incomplete." Admiral Ross was quiet for a moment. "Amy, what you've discovered is the most important secret in human history. The question is, what are you going to do with that knowledge?" "I don't know." "How do you process something like this?" "You accept that sometimes good people have to make terrible choices, and you decide whether you're going to help or get in the way." Amy thought about her brother, standing alone on some distant station, watching for monsters that most people couldn't imagine. She thought about the thousands of other humans doing the same thing. What happened to Ryan? Really? Admiral Ross's expression softened. "He volunteered, Amy. He knew what he was getting into. And he saved a lot of lives. Is he still my brother?" "That's a question only you can answer when you see him again." Amy made her decision. "What do you need me to do?" Admiral Ross smiled. "I need you to help coordinate the intelligence network. The Watchers send reports, but someone needs to analyze them and predict where the next breach will occur. And if the final protocol is implemented, then we'll need someone to make sure the sacrifice means something. Someone to make sure that the rest of humanity and the rest of the galaxy survives what's coming." Admiral Ross stood to leave. "Amy, there's something else you should know. The entities aren't the only thing we're fighting." "What do you mean?" "Some humans think we should tell the galaxy the truth. They think other species have a right to know what's out there." "Don't they?" "Maybe. But what do you think would happen if the Galactic Council learned that ancient horrors were contained just beyond human space? Do you think they'd want to help? Fight them? Or do you think they'd panic and make things worse?" Amy thought about the aliens she had met during her career. Most of them were peaceful, scientific people who had never faced anything worse than trade disputes. "They'd want to run," she said. "Or they'd want to study the entities, or use them as weapons, or try to negotiate with them." Admiral Ross shook her head. "Humans might be crazy enough to fight cosmic horrors, but we're also smart enough to know that some fights are better fought alone." After Admiral Ross left, Amy sat in her office looking at the files on her screen. Somewhere out there, her brother was standing guard against things that could destroy worlds. Hundreds of other humans were doing the same, and none of them would get any recognition for it. They would live and die in secret, protecting a galaxy that would never know their names. Amy opened a new file and began typing her first intelligence report as part of humanity's secret war. She had a lot of work to do. Pete Collins was having a normal day when reality broke. He was working on the atmospheric processors for New Haven Colony, a routine maintenance job that he had done hundreds of times before. The colony was only 3 years old, built on a planet near the edge of human space. It was supposed to be a quiet posting, perfect for someone who wanted to get away from the busy inner worlds. Pete was checking pressure readings when the sky changed color. He looked up from his instruments and saw something impossible. The blue sky was turning purple, then black, then colors that didn't have names. Stars were visible in the middle of the day, but they were moving in patterns that hurt to watch. "What the hell?" Pete muttered. His radio crackled to life. "All personnel, This is Colony Control. Emergency Protocol 7 is now in effect. Get to the nearest shelter immediately. Pete had never heard of Emergency Protocol 7. In 3 years on New Haven, the worst emergency they had faced was a broken water recycler. He grabbed his tools and started running toward the main settlement. Around him, the world was changing. The ground felt soft under his feet, like he was walking on something alive. The air tasted wrong, metallic and sharp. And there was a sound, low and constant, like something massive breathing. Other colonists were running too. Pete saw Maria Santos, the communications officer, heading for the same shelter. Her face was pale with fear. "Maria, what's Protocol 7? Pete called out. "I don't know," she shouted back. "It's not in any of our manuals." They reached the shelter together. It was a reinforced building designed to protect against storms and meteor impacts. Inside, 40 other colonists were already gathered, all looking confused and scared. Colony Administrator Frank Walsh stood at the front of the room. He looked like he had aged 10 years in the past 10 minutes. "Listen carefully," Walsh said. "I'm going to tell you things that will sound impossible. But you need to stay calm and follow my instructions exactly." He activated a wall screen that showed a view outside the shelter. The landscape was changing, becoming something that belonged in a nightmare. Trees were bending in directions that didn't exist. Rocks were floating in mid-air, and in the distance, something enormous was moving. New. "Haven is experiencing what's called a dimensional breach," Walsh said. "Something from outside our reality is trying to push through into our space." One of the colonists, Dr. Kim Park, stood up. "That's impossible. There's no such thing as other dimensions." Walsh looked at her with tired eyes. "Dr. Park, what you're seeing outside is impossible too, but it's happening." Pete stared at the screen. The thing in the distance was getting closer, and he could see it more clearly now. It looked like a mountain-sized spider made of shadow and starlight. Where it walked, reality cracked like broken glass. "How do you know about dimensional breaches?" Pete asked. "Because New Haven isn't just a colony," Walsh said. "It's a monitoring station. We're here to watch for exactly this kind of event." The room erupted in confused voices. Pete felt betrayed. He had signed up to build a new world, not to serve as some kind of early warning system. "Quiet," Walsh shouted. "Right now, help is coming. Ships are on their way. But we need to survive until they get here." Through the shelter's thick walls, Pete could hear the breathing sound getting louder. Something was approaching the settlement. How long until help arrives? Maria asked. Walsh checked his watch. 6 hours? "We can't hide in here for 6 hours, said Jack Miller, one of the farmers. "That thing will find us." "No, it won't," Walsh said. "The shelter has special shielding. The entity can't detect us while we're inside." Pete had never heard of any special shielding. As far as he knew, the shelter was just reinforced concrete and steel. But then again, he was learning that there were a lot of things about New Haven he hadn't known. The breathing sound stopped. Through the screen, they could see the creature had reached the settlement. It moved between the buildings like a living nightmare, touching structures and making them dissolve into nothing. "My house," whispered Sarah Kim, tears in her eyes. 3 years of work. They watched in silence as the entity destroyed everything they had built. But it moved past the shelter without seeming to notice it. Whatever shielding Walsh had mentioned, it was working. Hours passed. The entity wandered around the settlement, occasionally reaching out to touch something with its impossible limbs. Everything it touched ceased to exist, not destroyed, but simply erased from reality. Pete found himself sitting next to Walsh. "How long have you known?" he asked quietly. "About the real purpose of New Haven?" "Since before we left Earth, I volunteered. For this." Why didn't you tell us? Walsh looked around the shelter at the frightened colonists. Would you have come if you had known? Pete thought about it. No, probably not. But now that you're here, now that you've seen what's out there, do you understand why someone has to watch? Pete looked at the screen again. The entity was beautiful in a horrible way, like a living piece of the night sky. But he could feel wrongness coming from it, a sense that it didn't belong in any universe that contained life. What does it want? He asked. To feed. These entities consume entire worlds, entire civilizations. They've done it before, in other galaxies. And humanity stands against them? Humanity stands between them and everyone else, Walsh said. Because if we don't, no, one will. A new sound filled the air, different from the entity's breathing. It was the sound of engines, powerful ones. Help's here, Walsh said dot through the screen. Pete could see ships appearing in the sky. But these weren't the simple cargo vessels that served the colony. These were warships, massive and covered with weapons he had never seen before. Ship was enormous, larger than anything in the human fleet that Pete knew about. It moved with purpose, positioning itself between the entity and the shelter. This is Admiral Karen Blake of the Guardian Fleet, came a voice over the radio. All civilians remain in shelter. We'll handle the situation. Pete watched in amazement as the ships began their attack. The weapons they used didn't fire bullets or energy beams. Instead, they seemed to tear holes in space itself, creating barriers that pushed against the entity. The creature fought back, lashing out with tentacles made of living darkness. Where they touched the ships, armor plating didn't just break, it ceased to exist. But the ships kept fighting, using tactics and weapons that defied everything Pete thought he knew about physics. Battle lasted 2 hours. It was like watching gods fight, forces beyond human understanding, clashing in the sky above New Haven. Pete couldn't follow the tactics or understand the weapons, but he could see that the human ships were winning. Slowly, impossibly, they were, pushing the entity back toward the tier in reality it had come from. The creature fought every step of the way, but the human ships surrounded it, herded it, and finally forced it back into whatever dimension it came from, when the tier sealed. Itself, the sky returned to normal blue. The twisted landscape around the settlement slowly returned to its proper shape. Reality reasserted itself, though the scars would remain for years. Admiral Blake's voice came over the radio again. Civilian personnel, you may exit the shelter. The immediate threat has passed. Pete followed the others outside. The settlement was gone, completely erased. But they were alive, and the thing that had tried to destroy them was gone. A shuttle landed near the shelter, and Admiral Blake stepped out. She was a tall woman with gray hair and eyes that had seen too much. I'm sorry about your colony, she said to the group. We'll relocate you to safer worlds and provide compensation for your losses. Dr. Park stepped forward. Admiral, what just happened here? What was that thing? Blake looked at the gathered colonists. That was one of the things humanity protects the galaxy from. One of the reasons our territory ends where it does. Why keep it secret? Pete asked. Why not tell everyone? Blake smiled grimly, because most species would run. And running just makes these entities follow you. Humans are the only species stubborn enough to stand and fight impossible odds. She gestured toward the ships hovering overhead. This is what we do. We stand guard in the dark places so that others can live in the light. We fight monsters so that the rest of the galaxy can worry about trade routes and cultural exchanges. Pete looked at the destroyed settlement, then at the ships that had saved them. Do you need volunteers? Blake studied him carefully. Are you sure? Once you join us, you can never go back to your old life. You'll know too much, see too much. And there's no guarantee you'll survive the training. Pete thought about the entity he had seen, about the wrongness that had emanated from it. He thought about the billions of people in the galaxy who had no idea that such things existed. "Someone has to stand guard," he said. Blake nodded. "Welcome to the Watchers, Pete Collins. I hope you're ready for the real war." As Pete boarded the shuttle, that would take him to his new life, he looked back at New Haven one last time. 3 years of work erased in a single day. But now he understood something important. The galactic maps ended at human territory, not because humans were territorial or secretive. They ended there because beyond human space lay horrors that would consume entire civilizations. Humanity had made itself the guardian at the gates of hell, standing watch so that others could sleep peacefully. And now Pete would join them. He would stand in the dark between the stars, Phi,